Alrighty, guys. So, welcome to whatever we're going to call this, kind of a podcast. Thank you for being here. Obviously, today I've got on
Yes, sir.
Elijah, Coach Mundy, Unk, maybe depending where you know him from. We might actually talk about that. I want to know where that came from, but just thought we'd get on and have a chat. We exist in the same space and we seem to get along quite well. And you guys were interested in hearing us chat, so I thought we'd jump on today and go back and forth for an hour or so, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. But again, welcome Elijah. Thank you very much for being here. How are you today, man?
Yes, I am blessed. I guess you're asking where that Unk thing came from. When I first started posting on like TikTok consistently last year, um, it was just a random video that someone had mentioned Unk to me, and I'm sitting there thinking, dude, I'm 24. Um, and I was like, dude, I'm 24. I wouldn't be an Unk. And you got all them talking about some, oh, dude, you're Stone Age, and so yeah. And then from there, it was more unks and unks and unks because I guess it's somewhat of a Gen Z thing. I don't know, but they also think a lot of people think I'm like 32. So
I mean, to be fair, I do think you're slightly older than 24, which I guess is a compliment to your physique more than anything. But are you still 24 or are you turned 25 now?
yeah, turned 25 in December.
Wow. Okay. So you're only about a year and a half older than me. That makes me feel smaller. But I think that, I mean, I've seen you sort of go back and forward with the Unk stuff. I know it's a bit of a joke at this point, but like
Yeah,
your sort of following was growing steadily because I think we were both sort of under 10K together, right? I think the
yeah.
first time I sort of found your account was probably we were 5, 6, maybe 7K.
Had to been around 4K.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So like yours
Paul,
is
when
sort of
Paul followed me, I was at 4K, about
hmm
45, about 4,500 probably when he followed me.
sure.
I feel like you followed me before him.
Well, there you go.
Um,
You got the Declan tick of approval before the Paul.
if you followed me before that Dr. Soko thing with the lengthened partials, then you were following me before Paul.
That sounds familiar. What was that about?
They tried to change the goalpost with that with the lengthened partial study. Um, I remember specifically because that I think Jeff had had the study come out, and they were talking about how there was no difference with the length and partials as the full range of motion. Um, and then they tried to shift the goalpost to saying, you see, there's no difference in growth, so you should just do the lengthened position. Um, but to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt with that study, I mean, considering the range of motion used, it wasn't all that different anyway. But even with the newer studies that's dropping now, it kind of either way, it's still kind of debunking all that anyway.
Mm.
But
I
as far
remember
as
that,
what
man. That
it
feels
was,
that must have been like 6 months or so ago. Because when you were saying that, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be something I have to pull from my memory. That feels like yesterday, man. I don't know about you.
yeah,
That feels really
like that.
recent, but that would have been 7 months ago by this point. Had to have been maybe August, September, right?
Yeah, so he followed me in August 21.
Wow, there you go. I mean, time flies, I guess,
Actually, he
probably.
followed me because of the leverage thing. The length and partials thing was afterwards, actually.
hmm hmm
Yeah, that length and partials thing was in September.
There's been some interesting studies. I think there was that one this morning that you probably saw. I actually think I saw you in the comments actually.
Somebody DM'd me about it.
The seven. I mean, I got it sent to me like 5 or 6 times, and I can't even access it in Australia. I don't know why our stuff is like we get different access,
Mhm.
because I need to start paying for libraries. But I had a quick look at the comments, and people were like 40% strength increase, and I was like, oh, it's not even worth reading. Like it's a waste of time.
Yeah, the
Um,
one that I laughed at, he was like, "Gosh, I wish when I was 4.5 years in, I had 50%, strength increase." Like, yeah, that's not even worth paying attention to, man. Like, there's not a
yeah.
chance. People are really training, you're not seeing 50% increase in strength.
You wouldn't
So,
even see that in like probably even in 4 years, let alone
no,
in 9 weeks. I don't know what this is the thing. I don't know why people. Like there are big accounts posting that. Like that was the Dr. Mike. Everyone's like, collabs on those posts. It's like for a start, it's 10 people. It's just find it interesting. If it was the other way around, if it was Paul or anyone sort of on the other side was to put a study up with 10 people, it'd be like, oh, it's 10 people. It only went for 9 weeks. But it's like, but we can do it when it supports the other hypothesis.
Where it lost me too, whereas where it mentioned this study shows that volume is king. And I'm like, what? Because you pretty much saw the same thing with the ones that did less as the ones that did far more. How does that make volume king? Unless I read something wrong. One of the slides he had said volume was king.
Mm,
That was pretty
mm.
interesting.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
kind
he
of lost me.
directly mentioned effective reps as well. So it's very clear what the motive is with posting stuff like that. It is literally to just sort of try to shit on the model that we sort of follow. But I mean, you probably read it more than I did. Was there it was a group that did a higher volume and less volume? One trained
Oh, I
harder,
didn't
one
read it.
trained easier?
I just looked at the slides. Somebody sent me the post. I mean, the first slide where it was talking about 7 reps in reserve, I didn't pay it no mind, and I
Mm,
just scrolled through it, and it was like, oh yeah, this is a joke because they were saying volume is king, and they're looking at the same. I think it was the same growth and same strength or stuff. I would have to look at it again, but it's like, dude, that makes no sense. How is volume king if we're seeing the same results? But then, by the way,
mm,
again, it's reserve. Something is off. There's no way those are like legit strength trained people, regardless if you want to say they're training for 4 years or not. Those can't possibly be real strength trained individuals.
mm. Yeah, I mean, it's just another one of the cases of where we're looking at outcomes and rather than how it's actually happening, right? Because
Yeah.
if you just look at the outcome, it gets so tricky and you'll never piece anything together. But if you want to have a model, like like I'm halfway through the mentorship with Chris, and it's like when you actually just look at how stuff works, it's like, oh, it's actually quite simple. Like, this all
Yeah.
fits together, and they don't want to do that.
And it makes sense because it's like, bro, I sit back and people just keep talking about, oh, did you see this study? And did you see this study? And really, honestly, I don't care what study drops. Because again, if you know how certain things work, it's like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense already.
Mm,
Like like you said, the one that or dude, there was one that recently dropped. Oh, the one set. They said something about the one set. Oh, did you see how one set is enough? I mean, duh. Like we talked about frequency and the one set stuff quite often. So that one new study doesn't really show much, outside of what we were already talking about.
mm,
Um, so I mean, like I said, people really take the time to learn how things work, then instead of chasing study after study after study that just continues to drop, like new studies that just drop, things wouldn't be so difficult and confusing for them.
mm. Yeah, I think there's like
They're
people.
confused because go ahead.
Oh, sorry, man. I was gonna say, like, I think people feel like each new study is gonna like require a post. Like, I've done posts on new studies. I think it's fun and people enjoy it. But like, I just try to help them understand it. But people send stuff to me like I'm gonna go, whoa, actually, I need to rethink my whole training philosophy. Hang on a second. We can train to 7 RIR. Maybe we should start doing that. Like, it's like again, and you obviously have a way that you coach in a preferred system, and it's built around like the fundamental sort of physiological concepts and things that we know to be true, right? Like something like,
Yeah.
training hard, using a full range of motion, using a two, maybe three times frequency. Like these are things that we just sort of generally accept. And then will be a new study. It's like, oh, should we include length and partials? Should we do this? And it's like if you have an overarching system like an outcome study or some made up shit like we saw this morning, it's not going to change anything. And if you find like if you're
Yeah.
listening and you find that like new studies will contradict how you train and you end up changing it, it's like you're missing the point. Like any coach who has a real system and has been coaching for a while and it's actually gotten results, they don't change up. There might be some very specific nuances that come out where we're like,
Peaks.
oh,
Yeah.
for example, like the fatigue stuff, it's all sort of, like I said, getting deeper into it with Chris right now, and it sort of makes sense. Oh, like what Paul put up this morning, maybe doing leg extensions first, doing squats after,
Yeah.
because it's a slightly different fatigue mechanism, and the
Yeah. I was
calcium
thinking the same.
ions stay with you for the whole workout. And it's like little changes, but the big systems, they don't change from one study. And I think people are expecting us to have a say on stuff where it doesn't matter. Like they're
Yeah.
just
Because
overthinking.
I mentioned that same thing Paul mentioned with the leg extension and squats, but it was with the tricep thing. Um, I explained it with the band. I think it was either I did it with the banded tricep. No, it was the eccentrics versus concentrics, I think. Um, Man, it was one of the posts where I talked about if you're playing with things that are not in those, lengthy positions all the time, you're able to train things a little more frequently. There's less damage that you're playing with. Oh yeah, it was eccentrics versus concentrics. And it's like, I mean, and it's like I said, it's cool understanding those things. And people want to talk about training more frequently, yet play with a lot more damaging things all the time. And that's just not going to work out for people. Because like I was telling TNF, dude, I did I did the banded tricep extensions in one day, and I could have did triceps the next day.
Mm,
And like compared, I'm doing like the JM press or some type of like I've done an overhead press like months ago. It took my triceps like 3 days to recover. So
hmm hmm
it just depends on what all you're doing. And like I said, all those cool things, understanding them, it's easy to really, you know, pretty much lay out your split based off of these things. That's why I
hmm
don't like answering split and volume questions because I'm sitting there throwing these pieces at you here. And it's like, well, I still don't get it. Just help me do the split. I'm like, dude, it's right here in front of you,
This is this is
So
something that's funny as well, and like I did want to touch on this because we obviously had a lot of questions come through, and people were looking forward to it, which I'm so glad that everyone wanted to watch. But there are some questions we just one cannot and will not answer. So it's like, and I'm sure I can speak to you here for you here. We will not review your technique in the DMs. Correct me if I'm wrong, you might. Like I'm not gonna look at your technique in my DMs. I'm not gonna look at your program. It's not that I don't want to help you guys, and I'm sure again, same with you, but we just don't have time to do that. And we would need much more information than you could give us in a couple of messages via DM. So as much as I appreciate you sort of asking for our opinion on stuff, if we don't answer, just know it's because we'd be doing you a disservice by trying to answer very quickly. And we can't you're doing us a disservice as well by not giving us enough information. And beyond that,
oh,
I would even just say
100%.
it's my job and I'm not going to do it for free as well.
Yeah,
Which is
there you
probably
go.
the main point, right? Like, I don't have
There
time to
you
do this
go.
shit for free.
Yeah.
I wanted to just be nice about it first, but there's just some things we don't answer because, I mean, it's our job. You don't go into a cafe and ask the barista to make you free coffee, just because you want to have a chat about the coffee. It's not how it works. So, even if I did have time, probably wouldn't do it for free anyway. We give out enough stuff for free.
Dude, I like when I first started, because the thing is, when I first got into the content creating, there were people that were taking advantage because I wasn't all that famous or anything. I was like, oh, he only has like 2,000 followers, so let me see if I can ask all the questions I can. And I helped those few people. It was a few people. And then as time went on, I was getting more and more and more. And I was like, yeah, I can't do this. And then plus, even anyway, I have clients and stuff that I take care of. So one, no, I don't have time. And then two, is like you said, the coffee thing. You're not walking to a coffee shop like, hey, let me get a free coffee because I want to talk about coffee. You know, dude, there's so many people that send me their workout videos. I'm just like, dude, I'm not watching that. Or people that send me their splits. I'm like, nah, I'm not looking at your split. And honestly, there's something I just didn't open. There's some requests where I look and see a split and I just don't open it.
hmm
There's some people I'll tell them straight up, no, I'm not. Not helping you with your split. But I just, for me personally, I find it disrespectful when one, you see that I am a coach, plus my name sit there and says coach. I have clients. I take care of clients. It's like, oh well, he should help me anyway, just because his name says coach. So you should, you post on social media, so you should be able to coach people. And I was like, no, I mean, I have people that pay me for my time.
hmm
So I feel like, do we throw out enough free content? If you have an issue, if you genuinely need help, get that guidance, but don't expect to get, outside of the free content, for what clients usually would get. So that would be my take on it. I'm gonna tell you straight up, no, I'm not looking at nothing you're sending me. So
That 100%, man. It's like even, and then if I go to answer a free question, I'm then taking time away from clients who are paying me money, and it's just like it doesn't work business wise, guys. So we're never trying to like. It's not that we don't like helping people. It's that there are people who pay us to help them, so they have to get priority. Um, yeah, I mean, the more I post and the more I grow, it seems, and this probably happened to you, the more that stuff happens, and I think it's probably happening to everybody. It's just that not many sort of people talk about it that much. I think that Yeah, it probably happens to everyone. So like, I got a lot of questions about exact volumes, or like there was even questions about like talk about muscle lengths, and it's like what does that even mean? So yeah, in terms of like that the maximum volume or whatever, just like and you can give your answer as well, but in my opinion, just like pick a number that is less than like 9 and see if it works. And if you don't feel like you're progressing, take some away. Like that, we can't be. I don't know if I don't think I can be more specific than that. I personally program between like 3 and 8 sets a week, generally on the lower side of that as well. More probably like 3 to 7, maybe slightly higher for like females with glutes or maybe quads in someone who's like less trained. It just depends. But like I don't feel comfortable being more specific than like 3 to 8. What do you think?
As we mentioned earlier about the like how you said Paul made that post with the leg extensions and the squats, and I made the post about eccentrics versus concentrics. If you are playing with things that are less damaging, you have room to increase the volume. Is it a need? No. I'm gonna just throw that out there. Is it a need? No. If you're already doing like 2 sets of something per session, that's kind of fine. If you want to push three, that's cool. I don't think there's anything I'm really worried about getting over four. You know, women with glutes, I mean, sure, but then again, I would make sure I'm playing with things that are not very damaging. Like, let's say,
Mm,
like I would play with short position movements. So, like for me, I'm not doing 3 sets of some type of lengthened glute exercise. Usually, if I did 3 sets of glutes, it would be because I'm playing with the banded 45s. That's not all that damaging, you know. So like it really depends on the exercise selection as well. So I guess I can throw that out there. Depending what exercise you're doing and how damaging it could be, you have room to play with a bit more volume. Other than that, dude, it's really not that big of a deal anyway. Because
mm,
if you're between four, again, like I mentioned that post is if you're between 4 and 10, you're fine. But I really wouldn't push the higher end if you are playing with more damaging movements. That's just how I would go about that.
mm. Yeah, I think I'm going to do a few more posts on the different fatigue mechanisms because I mean, just the better I come to understand it, the easier it is to post about it. But I don't think people are really aware of like the different fatigue mechanisms. So when we say something like a lengthened position movement is like more fatiguing, then you can go on to say like a lengthened position movement taken to failure, more fatiguing again. And then if you're like pausing in the stretch, more fatiguing again. And it's like if you were then somehow to do like any sort of drop set or anything like it just like exponentially increases. And so something that people have got to understand is that the stretch fatigue is different to the shortened fatigue. And the stretch stuff sticks with you for the whole rest of the workout. Like after that, it's slightly different. And so you just have less room to move. So yeah,
Yeah.
it totally depends on exercise selection as well. But then you could even look at like you said, whether the actual position of the movement is shortened or lengthened. But then even just comes down to exercise execution. So not just the profile, but like what's the range of motion? How much time are you spending down in there? Like how stretched are you getting? What's the tempo like in the stretch? Like there are multiple things that come into it. And so like a good example would be a client of mine was getting a bit of chest soreness and straight away alarm bells going off because he's super consistent. We'd been training together for a while. And so I just said, hey
Mhm.
man, next week on the dip, let's just use a bit less range of motion. Soreness goes away. And so it's not always like total volume. We did end up changing the volume to be less, but in that time it was just the amount of stretching. So yeah, we can't really give you exact volumes, but if you're under 10, you're probably not doing yourself too much damage,
Right.
because it's above there where you just one shouldn't be that high and two have zero room to move, zero sort of margin for error.
Yeah, and I think people are worried about, oh, if I'm not sore, then I must didn't do anything. Because, dude, for me with Instagram, like I said, all of a sudden hitting this algorithm, like there's been a lot of people that's starting to follow me that have no clue what's going on. So for me, I'm finna actually have to kind of make some posts that can help them out because some of them don't even know who Paul or Chris is. They're not up to date with none of the science-based stuff. There is some people that's coming from, um, the stretch coat side. Like I'm getting a lot of people that just have no clue what I'm talking about. And I'm just like, man, dude, shucks. Because
Mm,
I mean, people, yeah, dude, you can go back and watch stuff, but then there's just some people that genuinely have no clue what's going on. Um, so for me, I may have to try to explain some of that stuff too. But which I mean, I kind of am. Like I said, the eccentric versus concentric post, I feel like that was a pretty simple post. Like, hey, something could be a little more damaging than something else based off of, hey, what your tempo looks like, um, how, of course, deep you're taking a certain range of motion. If you are playing in a more lengthened position, it's like a lot of stuff can depend. Um, but yeah, I think, man, once people get like basics down and like I said, not worrying about how sore you are, dude, you're gonna be great. Like I don't go to the gym trying to figure out how sore I can get. I think that's just something that you have to let go of. Because I mean, we've all been there. Like hey, I got to work super hard and I got to feel like I did something. We've all been there, dude. Um, but it comes to a point where you have to mature and understand that you don't actually need that.
mm.
And that's just a lot of that is really afferent feedback, dude. If you're always feeling beat up, that is a negative sign. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I don't know about you, but I
I
just
try to get
rarely
you to
get
understand
sore.
afferent feedback.
I just rarely get sore. I don't know about you. Like I'll maybe on a new movement. I rarely change movements. I'm sure same as you. Like for example, I added in the hamstring 45s after you'd been doing them because I was like, that looks like fun. Looks like something I can ego lift on. And hamstrings were sore. It's like, oh, it's just a slightly different position for me, and I was a bit sore for a few days, and then it went away. So it's like if you're well trained, you're consistent. I don't find that I get really any soreness at all. I like
Yeah.
I can't remember other than that. Um,
For me, if I were to kind of pinch in there, the first time I did the 45s, I wasn't sore at all. But
there you go.
then understand like just people have like they're but again, y'all don't like I used to could be able to do the splits, and I do Jefferson curls. So like for me, hamstring wise, that was nothing. Like doing a 45 was nothing. Um, so again, you got to understand like sometimes people just already have some adaptations you may not have, and people don't like I said, man, practical application is just so bad. And people for whatever reason want to think people are just exact same for everything. People ask, oh, how come I was sore when I did this? And I'm just like, I mean, dude, you're probably just not there quite yet, dude. Like you
Mm,
mentioned, the first time you did it, you were sore, and afterwards, not really. First time I did it, I had no issue, but I've taken my hamstrings to quite some extreme lengths and intensity, so where that wasn't really anything for me.
mm. Yeah, I think something that people, I don't know if this actually been spoken about much at all on, but it's relative to your actual flexibility as well. Like your stretch tolerance, if you're very
Yes.
flexible, you have a great stretch tolerance. And so, like, again, going back to that afferent feedback, that perception of effort. So, for example, we're a great example because you're flexible and I'm not, or maybe you're saying that you used to be super flexible. You're certainly more flexible than me. You didn't have soreness, I had soreness. So, what's actually happening there? Well, I hadn't done stiff legs for a while. So this was sort of a newer movement pattern. I hadn't trained hamstrings at the hip for a decent amount of time. I'm not flexible. Touching my toes gives me a decent sensation, whether that's just because of the limb length and arms, whatever, but I'm not flexible. So then I go do a 45 where there's absolutely more length through the hamstrings than the previous training I had been doing. Um, and so I get a bit of extra soreness. But if I was to just to go and do some stretching, I might get the same soreness. So it's like, again, you're going to be able to tolerate it better. You're going to be able to get more length through there in general because your perception of effort's going to be lower at that muscle length than it is for me. So like there is individual factors as well that will come into soreness. I don't know if that topic has been touched on. Have you seen much? Like it's not super important, but I think people wouldn't really think that that
I've
actually comes into
somewhat
play.
I've somewhat touched it on I don't know if I've ever gotten into exacts with it, but I've mentioned several times how I'm just more flexible than other people. Things won't bother me as much as compared to you. So when people ask me, "Oh, how come my hamstrings were sore for this?" I'm just like, dude, I mean, your hamstrings probably suck. You know,
Yeah.
like when I made that the post about, because there's so many people that's trying to tell me, the free weight 45s were dangerous just because of the amount of load I was using. But it's like, dude, y'all have no clue what my hamstrings are capable of and like what I put my hamstrings through. Like, dude, in high school and college, I might have had some of the worst hamstrings you can imagine. And but
Hmm.
the thing is, like I mean, I used to pull a hamstring like every other week, it seemed like. Um, and I could not touch my toes. Probably I barely could touch my shins. And I used to always wonder like, dang, how come some people can touch their shins and touch their toes? Because I sure couldn't, you know. Um, and it wasn't until years down the road and I started strength training and learning how to strength train and understanding if I want a certain range of motion, I have to, of course, progress towards that range of motion. And I genuinely wish I can kind of get that point across to people. If you want something in particular when it comes to strength training, just try to progress to it. It's no different than you getting stronger in like one range of motion. Like we can imagine a bicep curl using the same range of motion, but over time you can curl a little more, curl a little more. It's no different with how flexible you can get. If you want a certain range of motion, you progress towards it. You eventually just inch your way into more range of motion. And like I said, for me, it was a point I could barely touch my shins. Dude, I got to a point where I was pulling my knees to my nose. So it was like, it's if you want a certain range of motion, you work for it, but it's going to require some intensity. Because you hear a lot of studies talking about stretching doesn't improve flexibility or whatever it was, or it doesn't help prevent injury. But a lot of those studies are not at all intense. Like it's not real strength training style studies. It's just like, oh, hey, we're just doing some type of passive stretch and it's not really helping us much. Well, yeah, of course not. Straight like if you want some real injury prevention or some type, you're gonna have to strength train to where you're stronger in that given range of motion, not just reaching in a range of motion,
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm. That is pretty
if
much
you're trying
how
to do a
I.
bicep, go ahead.
Sorry, man. I don't
You
mean to
might be a
interrupt.
little
There's a bit of a
delayed because of
delay.
the
Yeah.
Australia. So
I was gonna say I'm not trying to
go
interrupt you, man. I'm sorry. I was gonna say that's
ahead.
exactly how I do rehab. Like I rehab powerlifters, I rehab people like us. Like you just get stronger in a certain range of motion the person doesn't have access to, and so like often you'll hear people who are injured say things like, um, "I don't have this range of motion. I don't have access to it," or I'm super they don't usually say this, or I'm super weak in that range of motion. The answer is always you suck in that range of motion. You have it. It's your bones are not touching each other. You can go into this amount of external rotation or whatever. Sometimes you do have structural abnormalities and people can't move in
Yeah,
certain places, but like a common one's at the ankle. I actually think I have two bones touching each other, so my ankle mobility is absolutely awful. It is a condition, it's called something, but it's just and 9 times out of 10 they're just not strong in internal rotation, or they're just not strong in this, or they just haven't loaded the Achilles, in super deep dorsiflexion, whatever. So
what I tell people,
yeah,
do that. You're weak. You're
you're just
weak,
weak.
man.
That yeah.
You're weak.
Hmm.
How come I can't? You're weak. Every time somebody tells me, I'm like, dude, you're just weak. That's all it is.
This
You
that's
know.
that saying, right? It's
Uh,
like weakness, strength is never a weakness, or whatever it is. It's like it's literally could never hurt you to get stronger.
yeah, and it's like I said, bro. And well, there's people that also mention, well, how do I strengthen the range of motion when it hurts? I
Mm.
mean, get over it. Get
Yeah,
over it. Like
pretend it doesn't
when
hurt and
I
keep doing it.
yeah, I had them tendon issues, dude, and I still somewhat have it in that left knee for whatever reason, and it might not be a tendon issue anymore. I don't know. I've never went to the doctor or really cared about it. But like, dude, I messed up both of the knees because I was lifting a load that I had no business trying to lift. You know, it wasn't because of strength training, it was because of my stupidity. Um, Screwed the left knee up, and then a year later screwed the right one up because I was compensating a lot. Eventually got over the left one, and then the right one is still having issues, but the right one is fine now, and the left one is still tripping. But it's like that wasn't because I was strength training, that was because I did something I had no business doing. Um, so it's like, how do I strengthen it? Well, you're gonna have to get over it. It's gonna be painful.
Mm.
If you want some tendon adaptations, it's going to require you to lift fairly heavy. Um, and I made the post about that today with strength training actually,
Mm.
because people act like strength training is dangerous, but that's really the safest thing you can do if you're not stupid about what you're doing in the gym.
I saw a
So
comment
that's
actually. I think it was
hard
you.
on hard
Someone
art.
compared the injury rates in powerlifting in like per 1,000 people. It was like 1 in 1,000 or whatever. And it's like powerlifting is a really safe sport. And this is coming from someone who's seen quads been blown out. I treat powerlifters like every week who are injured. Like it's cognitive bias. I would go to say it's a dangerous sport because I just see injured people because of my job. But powerlifting is a really safe sport. So then you can assume, like, or you can infer rather, that bodybuilding with heavier loads, lower reps would be safe in a similar manner. I see all the time people saying in your comments about the 45s and how it's dangerous and whatever. Now, I understand because in that bottom position, as I go to pick up the weights, I have a tiny bit of hesitation. I can just feel my tendon behind my knee. That's just because my stretch tolerance sucks. So if you're like, you copy Elijah or myself, whatever, you see that exercise, maybe just get more flexible or just be sensible and know that that sensation is going to go away as you get better at the movement. So probably
I
two,
find it
three
weird
weeks.
because people have a hard time thinking for themselves. Obviously, if your knee is super straight and it's bothering you, just bend it a little bit. As long as both joints aren't moving. So you can bend your knee slightly and still train your hamstrings from the hip if both joints aren't moving, you know?
Yeah,
So it's
the
like,
RDL thing
well,
is so interesting as well. People
yes.
like, what's the difference between a stiff leg deadlift and an RDL? And I have to say over and over again, okay, first of all, doesn't matter if you pick it up off the floor or if you walk out of a squat rack. It doesn't matter if it's on a Smith machine or it's free weight. It's about the knee position. I mean, I don't understand why people don't get it. If your knee is closer to being extended and not moving, it's going to be more hamstring. And if it's bending more, you're in more flexion and it bends more as you come down, you're gonna be hitting more glutes. I don't know why people, oh, it's off the floor, it has to be a stiff leg. I mean, I wouldn't do an RDL to the floor for obvious reasons, but you can
I
do a
wouldn't
stiff leg
either. I
deadlift that
wouldn't.
doesn't touch the floor. It doesn't have to touch the floor. It's relative to your limb length. It's relative to um, how deep you want to go. You don't have to go all the way down. It doesn't people because I do my stiff legs without touching the floor when I do them because I don't have the
Yeah.
proportions. It's like that's an RDL. It's like, well, if you're commenting on where I'm picking the bar up from, you're wrong. If you're commenting that I'm ego lifting and my knees moving a bit too much, then sure, maybe this is more like an RDL. But yeah, that's thought that tied nicely into the 45 thing because it perplexes me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's also going to depend how much both joints are moving too. I mean, if there is a slight, like if the hips flex and the knees bend a smidge, I mean, there's still going to be hamstrings. But if the knee is bending excessively, you can expect less hamstring. It's not like all of a sudden, like, I don't know, people act like if one of the joints moves slightly, all of a sudden, oh, it's completely out of it. Like the example, let's imagine the jam press. If the shoulder joint moves a smidge, dude, there's still going to be long head. To what extent is going to be how much shoulder flexion and extension there is when you're
Mm,
also moving the elbow joint. It's going to depend. So like I don't understand that either because people act like, oh well, you're doing a J press, there's no long head at all. I mean, it depends, dude. You
mm,
know, if there's going to be roughly about the equivalent, movement with both joints, then yeah, you can say there's no long head. But if there's very slight at the shoulder joint, I mean, dude, you're gonna have a lot of long head near extension anyway, you know,
mm.
going towards that extension at least. Because I mean, dude, if you kind of think about it, hey, slightly bends, then the rest of the extension, you're not really moving the shoulder all that much. Long head
Mm.
is going to control quite a bit.
That's an
So it's
interesting
just
one, actually, compared to the hamstrings, because we sort of 6 months, a year ago, we are sort of predicting, like based on the internal moment, that the long head would sort of not really be great overhead, but and this is something I spoke about with Chris because I couldn't fully wrap my head around it. But the outcomes, which again, it's not that outcome is useless. It's just like it's not the be all end all. The outcomes of studies are showing like more often than not that the long head would grow up here, and so it really just does come down to if the shoulder is moving. And I think Paul did a post on it recently, which had people confused because people have heard that the long head doesn't grow overhead.
I don't know why people say that. It's
based on it.
just it,
Well, it was losing its, and this is something that Chris posted about, or and I'm not going to speak for Chris because I won't say it properly, but I'm fairly sure Chris had said we could predict based on the internal moment that the long head is just not going to work very well up overhead. Now, whether or not that statement is assuming the shoulder is moving, because the shoulder tends to move more in overhead movements. So you a JM press, a skull crusher
yeah,
where you're moving the shoulder. I had this argument recently with someone where we just had different interpretations of what a skull crusher was. A skull crusher to me is like this, like the ego lifting, like sort of the shoulder is
yeah,
really moving throughout. And I was saying, well, that's not going to really grow the long head maximally. I use that word. He's like, oh, but TNF posted this. TNF did this study. Like, look at this study, look at this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, what we have here is a misunderstanding because I think the shoulder moves in a skull crusher based on how I've seen them done, and this other person didn't. And so that makes total sense.
yeah,
It's again, it's not like again in this position here, like the labrador extension that hypertrophy coach does a lot. Like I've been doing that. I've done JM press. When I do my JM, I leave my elbow really high, so I think I get very, very minimal shoulder movement, and so like it's been a long head movement for me. Sort of, I banned it as well. But yeah, I think like stuff like that, and when people were overcomplicating this, I had a lot of questions about it, and I was guilty of maybe making judgments and saying things that were maybe not 100% accurate. Like, I think it was actually something that I've been wrong about in the past is the long head stuff. But worst case scenario, let's say the long head, just make it up. Let's just say the long head doesn't grow up overhead. Well,
yeah,
worst case scenario, you just train the other two heads. And so it's like if you just do a push down on one session and the JM press on another, like and we're saying it doesn't grow. What was the worst case? Like the long head doesn't it gets a little bit more atrophy than the medial and lateral head, like in the tail end of the week, it's not going to make or break your physique. And so it's like, even if this, like, we're really arguing over minutia here, like it's not a huge deal. In saying that,
yeah.
I just like to do like a two movements down by my side anyway. I took out JM press. It was getting a bit much on my joints and my ego, but yeah, it's just like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't grow better overhead. Well, don't do it then. Like, just do a crossbody and just do a push down. Like, if you want to extrapolate and make statements about where it does and doesn't grow, that's completely fine. But don't make it more complicated. Like, do a push down, do a tricep extension machine, do a crossbody extension, like whatever. I just do two tricep exercises a week and I'm done. Like, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really not that big of a deal to me. Like I said, it's like, I mean, realistically, from an anatomical shoulder position, the long head would be better by the side compared to overhead. And I just think people take that out of context as if, oh, if the arm is overhead, the long head is not going to grow at all. That's not what anybody said. Um,
Mm,
it's just it would grow a bit better if your arm was by the side. You'd be able to do more for the long head there.
mm,
Um, because closer towards extension would be better with the lateral and medial head. And considering you, of course, can't just have really great leverage from both ends anyway. Um, but like to me, it was never that big of a deal because sure, you can do something by the side and be really strong. And if you, for whatever reason also wanted medial and lateral head, if you wanted to do overhead extension, fine. But if not, I mean, you can do the JM press, you can do a dip. Like either way, pick your tricep movements and get strong with it.
mm,
It's really hard to go wrong because pretty much everyone is doing an extension. Literally everyone is doing an extension. Okay. And you have some people that's doing their dips or some people that's doing their J and press, but everybody is doing some type of extension with their arms by their side. You're going to get enough triceps regardless.
mm,
So
mm,
I find that to me, I think the tricep argument is weird because I'm watching everybody do tricep extensions by their side anyway.
mm.
So
An interesting thing with the long head, and this is again, I don't see this spoken about much, and I do not want to complicate things more for people, but I think because of the position, um, if you're slightly abducted to about like 30 degrees, like in like more of like a cross body rather than a push down, I think, and this might be some pseudoscience here, but I think if we are agreeing that like line of pull has some like maybe small effects, it's I think it's largely overcomplicated by the people who push that line of pull stuff, but I think it the long head might have a bit more advantage if it's like slightly abducted.
yeah. I
But
can
again,
agree. You're able
it
to line
doesn't
things up
need to be.
better.
Yeah, it lines it up a little bit nicer.
Yeah. So like I mean, I tried that push down today with the bench. It's okay, it's
I don't
cool.
like it. I
But
don't.
I feel better with my arms slightly abducted, yeah.
Hmm.
With the crossbody to where it just lines up with the joints better and just feels better.
Mm,
But really that's all it is. Probably most of the time it's just because something can feel a little bit better. But other than that, either way, there's still going to be a lot of effort that you're putting into it. So it may not make that much of a difference, if you're still training pretty close to failure. Like, I mean, you can imagine if a study was done, a crossbody extension versus you just doing a regular push down,
oh,
it's
mm,
not going to be a difference. But if something feels more comfortable, do what feels more comfortable. That's
mm,
all I can go with.
mm.
So,
Yeah, I saw you try that, and I thought maybe it was the first time I'd seen you do it. I'm not a huge fan of that lying one. I don't know what it is exactly. I feel my abs are way more in that one. I think like the difference would have to be that, I mean, first of all, you're not in as much shoulder extension. Everyone starts doing that tricep push down out in front of their body, like,
mm,
inches away from shoulder extension. It's like, well, we could maybe argue that might be a tiny bit better if you're actually allowing that long head to perform a bit of extension as well in the bottom. But for whatever reason, I think like when we're standing doing like a normal tricep push down, your sort of center of mass is, let's say the cable's here, your body's here. You're
mm,
sort of leaning over. Like you've got a nice center of mass. You're on over the top of the weight. On the bench, you're kind of like you're falling backwards away from it, right? So like
mm.
it's trying to pull you up into shoulder
I
flexion.
honestly didn't feel much abs for mine.
There you
If
go.
I can think how I had it set up, man, like I really have, there was just a lot more going on with my triceps, especially I was when my elbows were flexing and like the weight was going back. Like I really was not bracing all that hard with my core. Not that I can remember, because I don't remember being like, dang, I'm sure bracing a lot. I can't, because if I was bracing a lot, I wouldn't do it again. I
Mm,
wouldn't do it again.
sure. I
Um,
mean, just differences, I guess.
yeah. I would have to figure out how I was set up, but I know for me, I felt fairly fine with it.
There you go. Yeah, look, the something that came up time and time again, well, in the question box was a few things. A few people wanted to know both of our SBD lifts. I know that you do not train them maximally anymore. You did do that deadlift video recently. I'll get mine out of the way. I squatted 250, which is like 550 pounds, maybe. Um, 250 kilos. I
Yeah,
benched 200, which was 445,
yeah, that's five.
and I deadlifted 600. So I wasn't that strong. Those are my mediocre SPDs. People wanted to know yours. You'd posted the
I
deadlift.
hate it. I hate it. I hate getting asked about my bench, dude. I hate it. But
Uh,
I mean, years ago when I did do a bench, I mean, I got up to like 405, but I mean, that was cool. But I mean, now of course I'd be repping that. But again, that was years ago.
mm.
Um, Squat, I've done 585, and then people have seen me do 5 plates for like really deep squats now. So I mean, I'd probably do in somewhere 600 something, of course. Um, and then deadlift wise, I feel pretty comfortable with hitting 850. What is that? That would be 9 plates. So nine
850.
plates would be 9 plates would be 845, because that's seven. The 8 plates was 755. Yeah, 8 plates was 755. I did that. I could have did that for three. So I could have did 9 plates. So yeah, 845 would probably be
Mm.
the max 50.
That's for you guys not in America. That's getting closer to 400 kilos. That's like 360. I'm just guessing here. I'm trying to do the math in my head. I think it's about
I
three.
can
Well, 800 is
eight
363, right? So I think that's like 380 maybe.
384.
There you go, 384. Yeah, so
840,
huge.
845 would be 384. So
There
nine
you go.
plates.
There you go, guys. So we don't have to ask either of us ever again what we do in SPD. We don't train it anymore.
I hate
Um,
it, dude, so much. People don't even see bench press on my page, dude. And it's like, oh, dude, how much you
I
bench? Like,
It's
I
just
don't.
it's just like they see you, you're jacked, and they're like, yeah, I want to know exactly, because it's like there would be dudes in powerlifting way smaller than you, smaller than me, benching more. And so they just assume, wow, he's got bigger muscles, his bench must be way, way bigger. It must be such an impressive number. It's like, well, it could be if he trained it, but we don't train it. So it's like,
And bench for me is also awkward because of, I mean, I have some pretty long arms too. Um, I wasn't really all set up too well for bench press either. Um, but I mean, if it was something I've trained, I'd probably be in the 500 range.
yeah,
Um,
definitely, I'd say so.
I don't see above 550 for sure, but I know around 500 makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, Around 500 would make sense because
Hmm.
I mean, I've done that one chest press. Dang it, what's the name of that chest press? I mean, I had 5 plates and a 35 on it, and that's a pretty rough chest press out of the bottom at least. But no, I don't do bench press. I hope I can stop getting asked about bench press, but it's not going to happen.
There was a few interesting ones in there, and correct, one might be wrong, but someone wanted to know, you said apparently that you don't logbook, and I just want to know if that's true. You don't logbook?
No, I don't care. No.
Okay. So I'm just assuming that you go in and just try to do more than you did the previous week. This is the thing. It's like if you are consistent and you go in and adhere to your intensities that are prescribed, you can reliably predict it's going to go up each week. Like I don't necessarily have to write down my um, upper back row and my chest presses to know what I'm going to do the next week and make it slightly heavier. It's nice to know that you're progressing on paper, but like you obviously know your program is good, you know it's working, and so it's like, well, do I have to write down everything? But I'm interested if you have a different explanation. I think our connection's a bit funny at the moment, but hopefully all that came through.
Honestly, bro, it's just honestly, I don't care to. I never cared to write anything down. I never did. If clients want it, I mean, that's fine. I mean, hey, we'll have a logbook for you. But for me, it's like, dude, I'm gonna go in the gym and try to be as strong as I can. I also know my training setup isn't stupid. Like, there's the only time I'm really going to be worried about it is if I just go way too long without progressing something, which is not happening.
Mm.
Um,
What would
but it's
that
like,
look
man,
like for you
just
timeline wise?
uh,
What would that be timeline wise for you with the amount of training you've done? Because for me, if I didn't progress something on like the third or fourth week, I'd be starting to worry. How often are you looking at stuff?
it depends what it is, honestly. Like you can imagine a bicep curl harder to progress for sure. Like the single arm, dumbbell curl, and you're going up 5 pounds, and like, yeah, that's something different. And then also considering, I mean, how many people have like 25-inch arms, dude? Like the bicep curl is gonna be like nobody's just curling hundreds and 120s and all that stuff yet. So that's gonna be something you can expect. Like you're gonna hit a wall eventually. And if you ever make minor improvements, it's going to be stupid minor. But then there's certain ways you can, of course, approach it by doing some type of cable curl or something. But it's like, I mean, you the bicep wise, you're going to have the like really, 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 really small growth after a certain point, really small, because again, it's only so big your biceps is going to get. So for me, it depends on the movement. Like bicep wise, I don't care if it's a bit where like I tried to get the 80s for 3 before, but that shut down because now I'm playing with this cut. And it's going to be a while before I get back to playing with some 80s again. But I mean, for me, it doesn't matter because biceps are fine for me. But like, let's imagine something that could matter, makes more sense, could possibly be something for glutes or maybe something like shoulder press, like something that actually mattered. Sure. Okay. If I am, yeah, around maybe 3, 4 weeks in, I'm not progressing. I'd probably be concerned. But other
Mm-hmm.
than that, I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
Mm.
Um, man, because the people take the logbooks to extremes because oh hey, if I'm writing it down, I must be I don't know growing more. I don't know. Like people, I don't know why people you know have an issue with me not logging anything.
Mm.
Huh.
Mm,
It's that's kind of a weird thing to me.
mm.
Um,
They
so if you're
hate that you
progressing,
can progress without it. I would imagine people get
plus,
annoyed that it.
yeah, and plus, I record some of my stuff anyway, so I can always look back sometimes. But like, if I mean, for the most part, yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I record, so I can just go look. Oh, I don't remember what I did last time. Let me go look, and I'll look at it. Other than that, yeah, dude, I'm not worried about a log book specifically. So if you're recording stuff, you're fine for sure. You don't have to record it and log it. But I feel like recording would probably be better because you can actually see what your form looked like. Um, and you can actually see if you look a little bit stronger. Like, let's say your last rep, you might have struggled with the last rep one time, but then this next time, that last rep was a lot smoother. I would honestly rather have recordings to look at than the logbook. Yeah,
Mm.
let's throw that. Yeah, let's throw that out there. So screw the logbook. If I'm recording the stuff and I can see that I'm stronger, yeah, I mean,
Well, I
cool.
mean, there's one, let's say one rep in reserve. That there's a range, right? There's one rep in reserve on this end of that spectrum where it's like, or maybe, or like the smallest amount over from 0 reps in reserve. And then you have all the way on the other end where it's like you're almost in 2 reps in reserve. You're getting close. You've got longer arms. I got 6'2" wingspan, which is decent. It's like another rep is a lot of range for someone who's taller, longer arms. If you're short, another rep might just, it's not that the distance isn't that much. So that actually leads me into another question I had. I prefer to keep, and this you might do the same. I know you like slightly lower reps than me. I spend most of my time like 6 to 8. Often I see you doing less. It's just preference, but do you prefer? So I prefer to just keep the reps the exact same and add load each week. To me, adding a kilo, adding 2 kilos each week is so much more reliable and easy rather than like if I do another rep a hack squat, that's limbs I'm 6'3" limbs, like I'm decently tall. It's like that's a whole rep to add. Whereas I can absolutely add 2.5 kilos, not even notice that it's there. And I've like, adhered to progressive overload, whatever. Do you have a preferred way of doing it? I know some people like to like progress up to 8 reps and then add load. It's like I don't know.
I
I
would
don't like
never.
changing two variables.
I would never, dude. Like, I get you can do that, but I would never. Like,
Mm,
let's say, imagine for me again, I generally like playing between 3 and 6. Dude, I'm not gonna pick something that I can do for 3 reps and then wait till I get to 6 reps. No, that would take,
mm,
dude,
yeah.
that especially where I'm at now with lifting, dude, that would take forever. So it's just gonna be okay. If I can throw a cookie on there, well, I'll throw a cookie on and boom, we're good.
Mm,
If I can throw a cookie on and still get 3 reps, I'm great. Or for something I'm doing 5 reps and I can throw another cookie on there and get 5 reps again, I'm great. But I'm not gonna sit here and pick the bottom end of my rep range to wait till I get the top end of my rep range when I'm this far into lifting. No, no shot. So,
I don't like that one either. This is actually a lot of like a decent handful of people have asked me. They've sent me your stuff and they've said, if the effective, I'm sure you've had this question, if the effective reps model is true, you can get 5. Why is he only doing 3? And so, okay, well, my response is always, well, one, it's preference, right? Like that's just what he wants to do. But secondly, it's like, how much difference is motor unit recruitment between 3 and 5? I mean, like, it's not really about the amount of reps in that space. It's just how many muscle fibers are switched on and how much tension are they experiencing. So like if Elijah can turn on, let's say like voluntary activation, let's say like 95% muscle fibers is the maximum amount he's going to get. Maybe he has like 90% switched on at 5 reps in reserve. By the time he gets to 3 reps in reserve, he's at 95. Why wouldn't you just start at 3 reps in reserve? Is that sort of your approach to it? Is that like, it's
dude,
just preference?
here's the thing. And I've tried to simplify it so many times, but I guess some people just don't see it. And there also is a lot of new people too. Fatigue exists. So they can keep throwing around that 5, 5, 5, 5 all they want. You are not going to have 5 simulated reps in every single set. You won't, especially if you get further into that session. I would feel more comfortable doing 3 reps at the end of my session anyway, compared to doing something as high as 8. Just
Hmm.
honestly, I would prefer that. Is it a big difference? No, because motor unit recruitment can still be high enough if you're doing 3 reps compared to 5, 6, 7, or 8. It's still going to be high enough. You're going to be fine. But to act like you're missing out on something, especially if you're doing more than one set, That's dumb to me.
Mm,
Because you can look at all the studies where, like I posted that study. There were some studies I put in there today with the post I did today for the strength training is like the safest thing you can do. Dude, there is no difference in hypertrophy when there's people that's doing sets of 3 to 5 compared to people that's doing 9 to 11. And volume is equated. There is no difference. So again, you can keep bringing they can 5 reps model, 5 reps model. It's like, dude, obviously that who cares? Fatigue exists, dude.
mm,
All of your sets have 5. That's why to me that's the most annoying thing that because it's like, man, you have to understand it doesn't matter. Even if that one set you get 2 or 3 reps, do another set. Because then from there, so like I mean, you have the people that's where that one the study came out with, hey, you do one set, that's enough for hypertrophy. So I mean, you can imagine if you're doing a single set and it's like, oh, hey, I only did one set and I only got like 2 reps versus this set where I got like 7 reps. And of course, you just accumulate this over time. Well, duh, that set with 7, 6, 8 reps is going to be better than that one where you're doing like 2-ish, maybe 3-ish. It's not going to be that much different, but it's going to be different and it's going to show greater trends for that 7, 8. But then it's also like, okay, well, throw in that second set. Now we're playing with where we're not going to be seeing much difference at all.
mm,
We're not, just not. So yeah, to me that's a weird, I don't know, cope, I guess, because it's like,
mm.
bro, all sets aren't going to have 5 simulated reps. Even then, nobody said you couldn't do a second or third set.
Yeah.
So
I
that's where I'm
think
at with
it's
that.
like instead of looking at like effective reps in a set, look at effective reps in a workout. Like there is a maximum amount of effective reps we can do in an entire workout. It's going to depend on
Yeah.
all the stuff we've touched on today, like fatigue. So that'll be stretch position, tempo, reps, whatever. And it's like if you just try to look at the workout from a whole rather than focusing on, okay, like if you try to maximize input for one set, you're inherently not going to maximize input for the entire workout. Like it's a push and pull type thing, you know, you've got to be smart with how you do it. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, literally, I just tell people I think he just enjoys it more. But like, I think the idea that like the effective reps thing, it sort of puts the idea in people's heads that like because motor unit recruitment is high enough in the last 5 reps, you therefore then have to do every single one of the 5 reps to get that like, do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's hard to
But if that's the
explain.
case, then you wouldn't be doing 1 to 2 reps in reserve. So if there's not going to be a significant difference between you taking something to failure and then versus like 1 or 2 in reserve, you can't expect there to be a significant difference for someone doing 3 reps as someone doing 5 or 6. There's no way you can expect there to be a significant difference. So
Yeah, it's very minimal. Like, I mean, obviously, the biggest thing here is enjoyment and comfort. Some people just like 3 reps, other people like 10. I tend to find that I enjoy leg extension more when it's slightly higher, like, you know, 8, 9, 10. But I really enjoy like 5 reps on a chest press. So, again, it's like, again, this is just one of those things where people need to understand that, like, you know, fatigue is real, it's important, but like the difference between like 3 and 6 or whatever, it's not going to be significant enough where it's just like you're seeing big changes in 6 months a year. It's just like someone's training is going to be slightly more effective. But again, it always comes back to enjoyment. I had another one come to mind. It was an interesting one recently. The why would we ever do what was it? Why would we ever do T-bar row? I'm not gonna name the guy. I don't want to shit on him. You made a video about it. You beat me to it. I just put one out this morning about the I don't know if you watched it, but it was the creator who said the leg extensions are bad, and he said that goblet squats are bad. But then I clipped it to his where he said pistol squats are good, and I just like sort of made a joke about it. I tried to beat you to it, which is why I posted it this morning because you beat me for the upper back one. I am sort of getting more and more toward programming the same exercises. I don't think we have to, and I was talking to Jake about this. I think it's very interesting the whole um, using the same exercises. Now, I think people have drawn unfair conclusions about, you know, like different joint angles are going to have slightly different fibers active and like the whole atrophy stuff where it's like if you don't have the exact fiber turned on and train it twice a week, it's just, I don't think it works quite like that. I think Paul did a nice job of explaining it with the contraction of the lat stuff. It's like in that end range position, you're going to have all the fibers, you know, all the I guess the same fibers turned on regardless of whether it's like adduction or extension or whatever. But I the
fact that
only
they the fact that the particular creator tried to debunk Paul for saying that is insane to me.
Yeah, I watched that video and I didn't even know what he was trying to say. But I think that my experience with this is like if someone wanted to do it, like for example, I'm getting to the point where I might just start doing lat pull downs twice a week because I enjoy them. There isn't another good exercise in the frontal plane. Like, have you seen that single arm like cuffed adduction thing people have started doing on
I'm not mad at
TikTok?
it. I'm
I
not mad
understand
at it.
it. I just think it's a really poor position to produce force in. Like, I can't see that being very comfortable, at least for me.
Well, I've done the one where it wasn't cuffed, but it's actual like I'm actually doing a pull down from there. It's a very fine position.
Mhm.
If of course you're set up properly. So you can do a lot from there. As long as the setup is fine, there's no issue. It shouldn't be no issue.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I tend. But are you talking about the one with the extended elbow, or are you just talking about a frontal plane pull down single arm? Because I'm talking about the one where the elbow's fully extended.
But the
It's
arm is just straight.
yeah.
Well, if okay, now I would probably look to I mm, honestly, it's probably not that bad. Even if I'm thinking of it with the arm straight, I would probably try to look to cuff maybe around my wrist,
Mm.
just to get a little bit more force production out of it. But it's honestly, it's probably not that bad.
I can
I
just
can't imagine
see.
it being bad.
I can just see it turning into like a long head tricep where the elbow's slightly bent and people are like cheating to like shorten
Oh,
the
for people that
moment.
don't know what they're doing, sure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just think it's like I mean it's one thing for us to talk about it, but it gets on TikTok and then it's like just random like 17-year-olds watching it and they start doing the single arm adduction because it's better because there's less joints involved and it's like, oh, okay,
Oh
like
yeah.
you got to look
Yeah,
at
so then
comfort
back to
and
the pull down thing. It's like again, a lot of it is kids that's raving about it, and trying to make it as if it's a big deal. And we're sitting there talking about the atrophy if you're not doing the same pull down. Um, dude, like that is not something I would possibly care about. There wouldn't be a single day that goes by where it's like, oh, I have to stick to the exact same pull down or exact same plane. There's no chance, dude. Like, dude, I've been lifting for 9 years, dude. 9 years, bro. Like, if you just consistently get stronger, who cares, bro? That is not going to change in your training because you sat here and did a frontal plane pull down this day and a sagittal plane pull this other day. That is not all of a sudden going to make some kind of big difference for your lats. Because either way, if you're getting strong over here and getting strong over here, you're going to have great lats. You're going to have great lats. And you want to sit
Mhm.
there and act like you're atrophying. Well, you're probably talking about one muscle fiber, if anything. You
Yeah.
might be talking about one or two muscle.
Again,
And
I
it's
think
like, bro,
people like
there's no way.
they hear about regional anatomy or like fight like different regions of the muscle and they're like, oh, I mean, it's the lower lat exercise, so the upper lat's not getting trained. It's like, no, like it doesn't turn off. It's still there. It's still working. It's just like
And
maybe the
what
lower
makes it
portion
worse,
has it. Maybe
what
it
makes it
has.
worse, it's not even like the biceps where if you're doing shoulder flexion or shoulder or elbow flexion or shoulder flexion. Like, of course, that's not even comparable if we're talking about the hypertrophy for biceps, if you're looking at shoulder flexion versus elbow flexion. We're looking at something like, dude, it really bothers me. There's no way you can act like all of a sudden you're missing out on quite a bit because you're not doing the exact same thing for lats. It
Mm.
makes no sense.
It's a bit too
Because
much inference, in my opinion.
yeah.
Mm. I
So
think
that was something I
the
was doing, and it was actually brought back up the other day, and I was tagged in it. And I was like, please don't start this again. But yeah.
mm. Yeah, I don't know. That one gets that guy gets quite a bit of credibility on TikTok. As the one of the I was surprised honestly. I just think it's like when you don't coach a heap of people and you don't have a heap of experience yourself, you tend to infer things that will not work out. So, like, for example, I don't know if you find this, but I would get a little bit sore and banged up if I try to do the same stuff twice a week. Now, the big consideration here is that, in my opinion, it gets tricky with progressive overload because you're trying to do the same movement twice a week. Even if you don't try to progress it twice a week, you're going to be inclined to go, oh, well, maybe I can progress it a little bit. And then you have this awkward sort of progression model where you're trying to progress things twice a week, which is just too fast for a start because, I mean, maybe for a beginner, sure. But for you or I, things are not progressing twice a week, and sometimes they're not even progressing once a week for certain periods. And I think that while you could do it well, which is why I understand why Jake does it for some exercises because he's very smart, some people will take that and run with it and just get it really wrong.
Yeah. For me personally, I just go in and do whatever I feel like doing. So if I end up having to do the same thing that I did the previous session, so what? But I also don't go into that session thinking, oh, I'm going to be stronger. Let me just like, no, I would expect maybe a week or two down the road where I can look to increase the load some bit, but I'm not going to sit there and try to force no like an increase every single session and they're like 3 or 4 days apart. That just doesn't make much sense to me because it's not something
Mm.
you're going to be consistently doing for that long anyway.
hmm hmm Yeah, I mean, one of the questions was actually a few of the questions I got in the box was like, "What do you two disagree about?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. We haven't discussed things we disagree about." But again, it
Yeah.
all comes down to preference. Like I just prefer to track stuff. You don't do it. Um, I again, yeah, we just have small differences in the way. I mean, again, it's very much this
Yeah,
a
let me look at this
similar.
list that you sent me. But go ahead. I'm just finna look at the list and see some of the questions. But
No, you're good. I was going to say, like, it really, we subscribe to a similar model. We follow similar methods. Anything we do differently would be minor differences in the way we look at science and minor differences in the experiences we've had and our preferences. We don't
oh,
argue
good.
about shit, really.
Yeah, I don't really care to argue much. But I see a good. Why don't science-based lifters agree with each other? That's a good one because it's not really science-based anymore. It's just agenda-based. I actually made a post about that on TikTok. Um, People are going to have their agenda. They're going to stick with it. And there's people that put a lot more money into a particular side. And even if that side is wrong, they're going to still try to stick to it because there's a lot of money and time that's into it. Simple as that. So even and then also because I mean, again, there's people that go based off this newest study, and then oh, this newest study, and then oh, this newest study, instead of oh, hey, we have all these studies here that built up to everything else to why we understand certain things. And yeah, so that's pretty much why all the science-based people don't agree is because it's more agenda-based. And they
hmm
got a lot of money into stuff. So
hmm Yeah, I think at this point it's like the I mean everyone knows who we're talking about. They cannot and will not turn around and correct themselves. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to give them any credit, but
yeah.
someone like for example, I really like Jeff Nippert. I've always liked him. He was one of the first people that I watched when I came to the industry. He seems like a nice person. He's always been civil in disagreements. Like I just think he's a cool guy. I have no problem with sort of I do agree that like he put up a story the other day where it's like deep stretching and pausing on the pec deck in the deep stretch. And I mean, I wouldn't do that personally. I mean, calcium ions, right? But like
It was
the
just everything we were saying earlier.
yeah, it does. But like the other guys, that's where I start to really get frustrated because it's like, that post this morning, like that was collabed with like Dr. Mike, Menno, all those guys. I'm sure the only reason was to try to disprove the effective reps thing. Eh, but it's like it's really agenda based,
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
is
you know what I'm
name
saying? Volume
calling.
is king.
Volume is king, right? We have like it's straight up name calling, like indirect name calling. There was also name calling on YouTube. I don't watch any of their YouTube, but people send that stuff to me. Um, why don't we agree with each other is a tricky. It's just like I mean, realistically, I don't have any emotional investment in anything I've said. Like I don't care that much about what other people think of my training methods. I wouldn't want to be wrong. Like, I hope that I'm right. I hope
Yeah.
that the methods we use are the obviously like that's I want my methods to be right and good. But if it comes out where it was like, oh well, I was wrong about this tricep thing, like I looked at the internal moment arm data and I thought, well, the people that I trusted had mentioned that maybe it doesn't grow as well up overhead. It turns out that in studies, depending on the shoulder movement, I guess I was wrong. Cool. But
Yeah. That's also why it's like, yeah, man, you got to understand the study too, and then real life application. Like I said, for me, that's why I never really forced some of that stuff. Is like, dude, I mean, you kind of have to understand what's moving too. Like, there's so much you got to really understand what's going on as well. And people expect everything to just be exact because of the study said what it says. But then also, it's like, I mean, dude, what was all going on, dude? Like, what was all going on for that study to even be relevant? So.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
It's
it's at
Go
this
ahead.
point, it's like it's business. Like you and I, like this is another thing that you've said. It's like you're not an influencer, you're just a coach. I love that because I think that maybe the difference in our content where yours is very like very straightforward and it's sort of I mean I don't know how you record that stuff but like I've started like trying different methods like I had an editor like I get in front of the camera whatever we do post a little differently. I think that people have started using that word with me since I got a few followers. I don't like that word either. Like I came from coaching, I came from powerlifting, I came from a degree. The difference now in people disagreeing with each other is business. It's literally just like if those guys came out and said they were wrong about stuff, they would lose income. And it wouldn't be
Yeah,
straight away. They would lose credibility. They would have more people saying negative stuff about them. They were wrong. Over time, that would decrease their business. Now, this we also got to understand this stuff is great for business. Disagreeing is amazing for business because, for example, I've had people
it's funny that you say that.
buy stuff for me and they go, it's interesting because I'd also bought this thing from this other person who disagrees with you. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, good on you for getting both sides. Good on you. Like that, if you want to spend your money that way. Um, but it drives like business for everybody. And I'm, I don't care. Like I said, I don't care. I was
I
wrong
had
about the tricep
mentioned
thing.
you the other day that I ended up blocking and someone else ended up blocking. He was the craziest thing is while he sat there and did that video, um, he was literally in my DM asking me, like kindly asking me to do a debate with him. And I mean, after he did all that arguing in my comment sections, then came to my DM and tried to be cool and was like, "Hey, this would be great for business. This would be great for business if we did it." And I'm like, dude, I'm like, you're not really worth my time here, dude. It's not, it wouldn't be great for my business,
I
and
think he
then
had like
even then,
2,000 followers, didn't he?
my followers wouldn't pay you no mind. So I was like, dude, this is a waste of my time.
Mm.
And then he proceeded to say something else that I didn't like, and I just blocked him. And he tried to message me on TikTok actually, and he deleted it, but that's okay.
It's funny. It's
Um,
funny because when you sent me that message, we were going back and forth talking about doing this, and you sent me that message in response to me swiping up and saying, "Oh, this guy'd been a dick to me as well." And I woke up to your message like 5 a.m. and I'm looking at it, and it was like it was what you just said, and I was reading it like you were talking about me, and I was like, it's like, what? Hang on a second. Like, because what you just said sounded like you were talking about this. And I was like, I'm confused. Hang on. And then I was like, oh, we're talking about someone else. Not, we're not talking about this. But
yeah.
that was a funny 5 a.m. I think that was like yesterday morning, or whatever. But yeah, people like, yeah, like, I don't know. I guess anytime I have a video that gets a bit of views, it's like just the most ridiculous opinions you've ever heard from mainstream. And so like,
Hey, dude, Instagram is worse than TikTok to me now when it comes to like all the airheads. Because at least TikTok, you're on a certain side of the algorithm. So like you have the people that know what you're talking about, and even if they may feel like you're wrong or disagree with you, like we're still technically kind of all on the same side. Like we're all in that one space. Instagram, I'm having people from all over the place.
mm,
And it's oof, oof, oof. Yeah, for me, Instagram is
mm,
rough.
mm,
So
mm. Yeah. Look, man, I don't want to go on for too long. I know that you've probably got stuff to do, but I did want to touch on it because I think people seem to be genuinely interested in us personally at this point. I don't know why. I don't feel like I'm that interesting at all. But there was a couple questions. There was one about foods we enjoy and what we like doing outside the gym. I'll start. I get all my stuff from steak, chicken, cottage cheese, yogurt, protein. I eat the same stuff every day. I'm not interesting. On the weekend, my girlfriend and I, we go out and get steak, cooked nice at a restaurant. That's about as exciting as my life gets. I plan on doing this forever, so I don't have many other hobbies because all my time goes into lifting, business, doing stuff like this. So I don't think I'm that interesting. Maybe you've got some more interesting insights and things that you do outside
Not
of the gym that
interesting.
they want.
I mean, for me, eating wise, um, I live with my family right now. So, dude, I eat what my aunt cooks. I don't feel like cooking that often. When I was staying by myself, yeah, I would cook. But I mean, dude, I'd keep it basic because I was lazy, excuse me. So a lot of times, yeah, chicken rice, chicken rice, chicken rice. I might throw potatoes in there sometimes. I would have my vegetables. I would have my steaks and all that. Right now, hey, my aunt cooks something, I'm gonna eat it. Oh well.
Hmm.
I do plan to move this year though. I guess I'll end up being in Texas. My life might be more interesting then. I'll be more around TNF too, and we're fairly close now, so I'd probably be doing quite a bit of collabs with him. I don't even know if they'll be called collabs anymore by then.
Just hanging out.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, I'll be moving to Texas, so my life might be more interesting, but dude, I don't do much. Excuse me, I'll play the game, I watch anime. Yeah, dude, I don't do nothing.
Hmm.
I don't like
Hmm.
going out. I stay in the house. So
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone can do what we do with it, like, and have a heap of other hobbies as well, and be distracted all the time. At least that's how I feel. Like, I don't think I could put this much effort into Instagram, this much effort into training. If I was, fucking running marathons and doing other shit and being a super interesting person. So yeah, I don't know if there's too much to go into. Oh, do you think that you'll ever do you think you'll do the Arnold next year? 2026 Arnold? Not compete. That's not what I'm asking. Do you think you'll go?
oh, okay.
Sorry, no, I realized I'd asked that question. Are you competing in the Arnold? No. Are you going to go there?
Am I gonna go? No, I genuinely do not care to be at any kind of bodybuilding show. I don't know why people ask me about bodybuilding all the time, or if I'm going to compete, or if who's my like, dude. I don't care about bodybuilding. I just don't
Interesting.
care.
I feel the exact same. I just like to train and talk about it.
I don't care. People see that I look decent, and it's like, oh, you're going to compete, or oh, who's your favorite? It's like, dude, I don't really care, bro. I
Mm.
just don't care, man. That's where I'm at with that. No, I'm not going to any bodybuilding show. I don't care to be at a bodybuilding show. I don't want to look at guys on the stage. I don't want to do it. That's where I'm at.
Fair
So,
enough. Totally makes sense. All right, man. I'll let you go. This has been a lot of fun for me. If you guys
yes,
made it
sir.
this far, I appreciate you. Go check if you for however reason you don't know, whatever reason you don't know Elijah, go check out his page. You can find it. It's Coach Mundy. Go check out his coaching. Apply. Get in the. Do you have a group? Do you have a training group?
Nope.
No. Okay. I'm not a massive fan of the training groups. I like doing one-on-one more. I got a few
Yeah.
people in there, but not I'm trying not to spread myself thin. But go check out Elijah's stuff. Um, I'll put this up on YouTube. I guess oh, I don't have Spotify, but yeah, if you made it this far, I appreciate you.
You can save it and send it to me, and I'll upload it on mine too.
Yeah, definitely. I'll
I
do
wasn't
that.
able to. I wasn't able to record because I guess it's your thing. So
I'll Google Drive it to you.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
you for having me.